You guys are all in the right room, right? Yes. Just making sure. So the first element is obviously, guys, the fact that you've booked online, you know who the collective makers are, but they're essentially two amazing individuals. One being here, I know he doesn't want to be bothered. Obviously, the co-founder Joseph is here, and as well as Lizon, Sabrina. And what they do is create diverse spaces for artists to flourish. And for the last 2 days, we've been looking at different works, things that they promoted, things they created, and just having talks on different levels about, anti-blackness, about the arts, about self-identity. And we've got a really, really good film by Alberta Whittle. She's an artist, a creator, a researcher, a PhD candidate at Edinburgh Arts. And the work that we're going to look at today, it just focuses on just how she feels. It's just so, I actually watched it. I find it quite emotional already. So I'm kind of like, whew. Just looking about, I'm just going to let the film roll so you guys can see, and then we can maybe have a discussion after as well. So there's 2 short films, her actually answering some questions, and then we can have a bit of a discussion after. So thank you so much, Tech Crew. If you could just play, that'd be great. Thanks.
Come to be come, come to be come, come to be 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 come. Come to be, 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 come to be. Come to be, come to be, to be, come. Come to be, come to be, come to be, come to be, come. Come to be, 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 yeah.
Facebook Live today, you can explain that yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell me nothing like that.
Okay, listen.
Am I being...
Have you got a reason to be out?
Are you stopping me from leaving? Are you stopping me from leaving? So you're stopping me from... So you're detaining me?
I'm stopping you to ask you a reason.
No, I don't want to. Why did you try to grab my phone when the camera was on?
Listen,
is it your phone? What you want? Is it my phone? Yes, it's my phone. So why do you try and grab my phone?
Listen, you film all you want. Mine is visiting now.
Okay, so are you lot social distancing?
Unfortunately, we're working, aren't we?
So are you lot social distancing?
Listen,
Huh?
we're on a van together.
What am I doing? I've seen like 12 of you in a van. So why? What's the reason for the search?
Okay, it's a section 60.
What's the reason?
For anticipated violence, okay?
Anticipated violence.
On the borough of Brent.
Why do you think I'm going to be violent?
Okay.
When I've just simply asked you if you're detaining me, and I've tried to walk away.
Information has received that people are carrying weapons, okay?
People are carrying weapons.
In regards to this, gangs. Yeah?
Gangs.
Okay.
I've never touched drugs in my life.
I don't know you. I'm not a mind reader.
I don't know you.
Listen, my piece
You, from what you can take of
Listen,
me,
can you
you
listen?
see me riding my scooter,
Listen.
going out the station.
I'm not a mind reader, okay? Piece of signal out.
Man,
1, 2, 2, 3.
it's on the wall. Okay, okay.
Mate, it doesn't have to be like this. I'm asking for
I
your
know it doesn't have to.
cooperation.
Who said I wasn't cooperating? I asked you if I was being. I asked you if I was being detained or not.
You are being detained for
Okay, you didn't tell me that. That's why I was walking away, and then you started. Then you started not letting me go.
60, my colleague said that, okay?
He said that after I started walking away. I'm calm. I'm calm.
Right conversation.
I wasn't trying to. I was trying to
Can I
go
ask
and
you
do
to
what I
take
wanted
the bag
to do.
off?
I'm putting my AirPods in my case. Okay.
Can I ask you to take the bag off?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not telling you my name. Okay.
I don't suspect you're out here for a legal purpose, i.e. exercise, going to the doctors, or getting money from a business. Under that,
Can you
I
just
can't-
search me?
Now listen to me.
Can you
Listen
just
to me.
search me?
You've said your bit, let me say mine.
I don't want to hear what you have to say.
So, I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay, well, I ain't
Therefore,
listening.
if I want to give you a fine, I have to get your details.
You're giving me a fine?
Listen, if I want to.
Why would you want to give me a
Because
fine?
I can. I can,
Why?
under the COVID regulations.
You can.
Because you're not
Why?
out for a purpose.
Why? I told you I'm just going out
You're
for
not.
exercise.
You're out on an electric scooter, mate. You're
Yes,
not out for
I
exercise.
am.
It's not going to
Why do you
happen.
have to give me a fine? There's no
Because I
need.
can. The other option is,
What's the other
if you
option?
don't want to give me your details for it, I'll arrest you for the COVID regulations.
You'll arrest me?
I can do. So
Why?
what do you want to do? Do you want to walk away once you're finished with the search? Or do you want to give me the details? You're not being the most wanted man in London, and we have a polite chat and engage about it and
I
advise you how
don't
to
want
do
a fine. I don't want a fine.
Give details, we can deal with you in any way. Is that fair? Or you limit my options and you get arrested for it.
You need to look at my name on there.
Yeah,
Why
we
you going
do.
through my wallet?
Make sure it's yours.
There's nothing makes you feel
Under
big.
these
How many other
circumstances.
people came out here and you targeted me and my guy, me and my friend?
Because there's intelligence to say that there's gangs hanging around
Gangs
with weapons, which is why we get to Section 60.
with weapons. You think I've got time for
I
weapons?
don't know you, do I?
got time for
Am I
weapons.
Maurice?
film to watch. Thank you.
Listen, 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 the sound, 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 the sound. My tongue lives in exile. Its place of origin is unknown. Memories of ancestors have been lost through my creolized tongue, but my body remembers the journey across the Atlantic in the swollen belly of a ship whose name has long been forgotten. Water, 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 everywhere, 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 and not a drop to drink. The sea is a graveyard, and the slave ship is a coffin. Are we still playing Dead to Survive? My tongue is not swollen like a corpse, nor is it gagged in iron to prevent me from speaking the truth. My tongue is a selector, mixing tunes of shanties and rhythms, and you can never touch the same water twice. Sing for me, Daddy, sing for me, Mommy, sing for me, Daddy, sing for me, Mommy. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dishy, thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Sing for me, Mommy, sing for me, Daddy, sing for me, Mommy, sing for me, Daddy. Thou shalt have a fishy on a little dish. Thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Thou shalt have a fishy, thou shalt have a fishy, thou shalt have a fishy when the boat comes in. Ring, 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 ring. 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 Ring the alarm. Ring the alarm. Ring the alarm. Ring the alarm. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come in and talk a little bit about the two films you selected for the screening program. You Can Never Touch the Same Water Twice is a film which I developed a few years ago, and at the time I was really starting to build into my research the ideas of ocean theory, but also memory, and this dual position that the water can have, especially the Caribbean Sea or the Atlantic, as a space of deep memory, but also as a space of healing and of loss. A lot of the footage for this film was shot at different coastlines, so in South Africa, in Barbados, where I'm from, but also in Europe, in the Mediterranean. And I'd been thinking about what are the missing languages or the kind of access to language that I have lost that would have been determined by plantation economies, by slavery. And so this idea of the tongue as being a selector, of being a way to root me to a cultural group or to an identity was really playing at the same time as my mind. And by returning to the water, to the ocean, as being a place where on slave ships, different language would have been spoken, different dialects, different forms of patois, different colloquialisms would have been exchanged, but yet this would have become like a melange or a mixing of cultures where different ideas of freedom could be spoken, or different ideas of hope were shared as people were trying to find ways to survive. It felt very poignant to think about that, especially when we think about the stories of refugees or people seeking asylum elsewhere and how they're crossing the Mediterranean and trying to enter Europe or enter the UK, and how that feels a bit like an echo of these early journeys that were taken by people aboard slave ships. And Holding the Line feels like a continuation of these conversations, of thinking about, when I made that film, it was very soon after the protests supporting George Floyd's murder by the police in the US had come to light, and I was feeling deeply frustrated with the criminalization of youth, especially Black youth, and the kind of brutal stop and search situation which occurs for so many of us. But water has always been a part of that, and trying to find ways to think about meditation, trying to find ways to think about rest, but also what is possible through communities and working together, and also protest. And I'm really glad you picked these films because I think they provide these different entry points into embracing or suggesting these ideas, where you can never touch the same water twice. It almost becomes like a bit of an origin story for how people from different cultures, people from former British Empire spaces in Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, are now in Britain taking and making home. And that idea of making home is really crucial in my work. But then how there are now these states of brutality, but also surveillance and hatred, racial hatred, are now kind of like the dominant climate that we live in the hostile environment. But I don't want us to stay there. I want us to really try and work together to think about what does it mean to protest. And that's why the voice of the crowds protesting is really very important alongside these more meditative sounds, whether it's singing bowls or chanting or ululating. It feels really important that we also remember the scope in being together. Thank you so much. You take care.
Guys, I got a bit emotional just when I watched it earlier. But just to remind you guys that Alberta Whittle, she is working with the museum. She's currently carrying out research in their archives as well as their collections. And she recently as well filmed and screened a film called The Axe. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. So that's something, guys, at the Queen's House, if you want to look at, please do. So as you know, today's theme is about, our cultural connections to the water. And I feel that Alberta's film kind of highlighted that and sort of set the tone. And I hope the tone isn't too somber at the moment. How are people feeling? Yeah, still active? And I just wondered, guys, if anybody had any thoughts or reflections they just wanted to share about what they've just watched. I've got a lovely lady in this checked jacket. Don't hate me. I've been looking at you. Is there anything you want to say about what you've just seen? Processing. Absolutely. Anybody else like to share any thoughts they had? I can't really see people, just myself in this light. At the back? No? Yes, hi there. I'm going to come and give you the mic.
Thank you for sharing the films with us, first of all. That was really, I hadn't seen Alberta Whistle's work before, and that was really, very powerful. But I was just interested in the theme of memory, really. And when she started speaking about it afterwards, when I was watching the water film, I was thinking about the connection between the two films in relation to memory. And, kind of ideas of memory and trauma and, remembering all the people who had died in custody, and then the really amazing thing that happens in the first film, where at the end you get those shots of protests and stop and search from the 70s, where it looks like the 70s, I think, and or the 80s, yeah. Could have been, yeah. So that making that connection between the past and now, and just an observation, really.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really love what she said about you can't touch the same water twice. And I wonder if that's connected to memory as well. Sometimes we have a memory that disappears due to trauma, physicalities, and so forth. And then we forget, or we try not to remember. And, like my favorite element has always been water, because I've always seen water as something that can fill any container. And that can kind of be seen as like a healing process as well. And just one more thing that Alberta said about language, and I think language is a tool that can be used to oppress, but also empower, and it's just about where you are in your journey and how you are able to do that. So just some thoughts, guys. So we've got one more film by Serge, but Serge, he's a serious guy, like Alberta. So I've got an A4 piece of paper. I've got to put some respect on his name, so I can't just be like, we're going to share his film. I'm going to have to read this out, so bear with me one moment, because he's done such amazing stuff. Just breathe. So The Line is a public art project following East London's waterways and broadly following the line of the Greenwich Meridian. Longitude Dialogues is a project that has been developed by The Line that takes its location on the Greenwich Meridian as a starting point for global cultural exchange. GMT time, why not waters as well? So the first iteration of Longitude Dialogues takes place on the 8th of June 2020 as part of Royal Museum Greenwich's World Ocean Day programme. Guys, are you writing this down? Because there's going to be a test after. Serge Atukwe Clotty's film, The Displaced, was screened online and accompanied by an interview with the artist and workshop activity. In September 2021, Serge Atukwe Clotty undertook a research residency hosted by Royal Museum Greenwich. You know what, just for a second, we really got to rate this museum, because they really are amplifying voices, so many different diverse voices, and giving opportunities to amazing artists who may have been known or who have been introduced to new audiences. So I just wanted to just rate the museum for what they've been doing. So just moving on, Serge has spent time meeting museum curators, exploring the collection and archives, and visiting The Line to develop ideas and approaches for his commission, Tribe and Tribulation, which launched at Greenwich's Panelist, I can never say this word, in July 2022. The project has been encompassed by a schools programme that's connected 6 primary schools in London and 6 in Ghana, and resulted in a procession that took place at the same time in both cities. So this guy's super, super international, just to say that. Final bit, guys. Like I said, I'll be coming to you guys at the back for the answers to these questions. So the film tells the story of the ideas and projects which would not have been possible without the support of the British Council International Collaboration Fund, Foundation of the Contemporary Art Ghana, and the O2 and Royal Museum Greenwich. So now I finished. The first question is, everyone's abated breath, ready to answer the question? Maybe we'll just play the film. How's that? Yes? So the amazing tech crew, if we could just play Surges.
My name is Sejatuku Kloti. I'm a multidisciplinary artist who is based in La, which is the suburb of Accra.
As an artist, I'm interested in trade and migration, and pollution is very keen because most of my work are found objects. So you talk about industrialization becomes demerit when it's not properly distributed, because those objects cause a lot of environmental hazards in different parts of the world. And those are the major problems, because some goods are not needed in certain places, but they are consumed because of industrialization. Because of the material that I deal with, I'm interested in how the human relationship with the objects, it also creates sort of performative experience around the installation.
The Line is a public art project following the waterways and broadly following the line of the Greenwich Meridian. Longitudinal Dialogues is a project that has been developed by The Line that takes its location on the Greenwich Meridian as a starting point for global cultural exchange. Tribe and Tribulation is our inaugural commission as part of this programme. It has involved a research residency at Royal Museums Greenwich, the development of a public sculpture for Greenwich Peninsula, a schools programme that's connected primary schools in London and Accra, and a procession that took place at the same time in both cities.
With The Line, we've been in conversation, I think, since before COVID. The work has actually expanded to be more of a research with the Maritime Museum, which I was there last year for 2 weeks to research about the history or the relationship between Ghana and the British.
It's quite fascinating to absorb all this information from the National Museum. I've been to the library to see the maps. I've been to the objects where I found flags, and those are very powerful symbolic elements that was used in migration. In Ghana, we have those traces whereby some of the old slave forts and all that has been used as fishing communities. And there you can experience some of the traces, such as flags that were used for migration and slavery. But looking at it vividly, you can tell that these are like traces for migration by the British.
So this is a very colonial map from the 1930s showing shipping and exports which are going to the United Kingdom. I'm
privileged to be here because this research has given me a broader understanding of migration in the context of the British.
Basic information that brought my attention to develop what I want to do with the residency is that in the British Maritime Museums, all the objects represent power. You know, they sort of archive every single thing that was engaged within the history of slavery and trade, tells you how powerful they are. Looking at our museums, it's very depressing. It symbolizes our depression. So I wanted to create something based on what our power is. Looking at like James Fort, Jamestown, how the people live on the beach. So I wanted to create sort of sound because I don't have anything to show. I want something as powerful, something that it represents now, you know, but also that informs you what has happened in the past. Now all this fort has been abandoned and it has become fishing harbor where people hustle every single day. So based on the sound, you can tell the struggle, the history of migration. So I'm building these 4 giant cubes which represent north, east, west, and south. You know, that sound coming from different part of the fort.
So Tribe and Tribulation has involved several specialists, including acoustics, electrical engineering, and structural engineering. The piece itself is a sound installation, which is encased in a totemic sculpture made up of cubes of reclaimed wood, as well as fragments from Ghanaian fishing boats.
So the involvement of the school was the idea of collaborations to see how they find my projects. So I was here and I did a workshop with the kids, which was inspired by my work. And I also asked them to do masks because I think masks sort of define identity. We are far away from the history of slavery. We are in contemporary space. So what materials sort of symbolize who we are and what we stand for? I was surprised with the result because I think that they took my work and sort of manipulate it into themselves, and I can see that sort of language of identity. The result that I saw from here, kids coming out with masks, working with fun of it is quite fascinating. And I think it's also about how we deal with trash back in Ghana because it's always there. You can find them on the street. Whereby in the UK they have dustbins where you have to settle plastic and cans. And that's why the kids were really, because they have it available, they don't need to find it. It's always there. They were able to sort of manipulate it in a way by changing the functionality from what they are used for.
Oh, I love that mask.
To further that conversation of creating masks, I developed this idea of possession because possession is how to exhibit the mask, not just putting them on walls and exhibit, but just making it more functional into a performance. So we had a possession where they have kids at the same time doing the possession here in the UK and as well as doing possession in Ghana. It was interesting how music came into it, and the kids, they wanted to prove because I had my mask on and I'm the artist leading this possession, and they were they created their own song behind me. For me, it reminds me of how some of our festivals back in Ghana, we chant with our own words. We create words to chant. And the one interesting thing is when they had to use my name to compose a song, and they're screaming my name. And afterwards, I spoke to a couple of them and they were able to tell me what they know about my work, which is very fascinating. So imagine having 400 kids having knowledge about your work. And I think it's a very impactful journey for me to work with children. The performance will sort of activate the work. I have to go through my mind and see how the space and time will convey the message that I want to deliver. So it's going to be a surprise even to myself. So I'm looking forward to it. I think the work conveys the message of migration and displacement because I think migration is a human right. Everybody is allowed to move wherever you want, but it's not as it's supposed to be. There's certain restrictions as to who can move here. So seeing the work, I want people to reflect on the history of where they come from itself, because I believe the world should be a global village where you can navigate to anywhere you want.
I loved what he said about migration being a human right, but obviously due to political lines, it's not always the case. But obviously what we're going to do now is that we're going to go on a break and be back at 2:00, and we have a panel discussion where we're going to be talking in depth about our cultural connections to the water and looking at some amazing art pieces. But guys, when you go out for the break, you might see some QR codes. If you could just scan that, because that will really aid us to for you guys to complete feedback for us. The Collective Makers also have a membership. It's free, and it gives you access to a monthly newsletter. And if you're an emerging artist yourself, or you want to be part of a artistic community, please sign up to that newsletter. Like I said, it's on QR codes outside, and there's also a website as well called thecollectivemakers.co.uk who have brought us this today. So have some coffee, shake a leg, and look forward to seeing you guys back here at 2:00. Thank you. Hello everyone, we're back. I hope you guys don't hate us for putting you in some sort of weird time vortex. I promise you guys it is still 2022, even though I know you've been waiting for a while. Again, thank you for coming back, sticking with us. This is the Collective Makers, Black in Full Colour Artist Talk. And we've got some amazing artists coming who are here and they really want to share their work. As you know, the theme is our cultural connections to the waters. So without further ado, let me just start bringing up these really massive artists. And before I do that, remember, we've got the website, thecollectivemakers.co.uk. Please look out for the QR codes where you can scan and provide feedback, because we really, really need it, and become part of our membership, which is free and includes, I feel like I'm in the Oscars, you know, when you talk too much and then the light starts coming down to like, shut up and let these amazing people come. So I will start doing that now. So first of all, we have Richard Mensah, who is an amazing artist who uses so many different types of mediums to express his work in textures, in colour, in depth. And obviously with water, and he's British Ghanaian, London-based. Hi, Richard.
Thank you.
Guys, we need some energy up in here, so please, thank you. Next, we've got another Ghanaian in the house, man. Like, they're taking over. And we have Esi Eshun. She has done so much stuff. Her most recent exhibition was at the Tate, which was Life Between Islands. She uses multimedia tools to express her art. She looks at post-colonial issues as well as slavery, and she's going to really go in. So Esi Eshun, please. And last but not least, we've got Foxy Moron in the house. Hey, AKA Dr. Babes. I just love Foxy Moron. I think it's like a bigger name, but obviously as well, PhD, Dr.Hannah Catherine. Here you are. Please come through.
Thank you. Oh,
Sound. She's a musician. She multidisciplinary artist. She uses sound. She engages us so deeply with the way she uses her sound, her language, her art. We're going to be here all day, aren't we? Just naming how all three of you are just so awesome. But thank you so much. But what we're going to do first of all, before we do our Q&A, they're going to go through some of their work. Guys, I know you guys are awake anyway, but please, hold your questions to the end, and then we can have like a back and forth dialogue. Is that all good? Thank you so much. So first of all, Esi, we're going to go through some of your work.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Very nice to see you, sort of, not quite. I'll just explain a little bit about the work that I do, and then talk about some of the ideas behind the work that I do. A lot of the work is very research-based, research-heavy, and I use text a lot, and I use sound, performance, photography, and moving image to investigate and tell stories. I use poetic idioms, poetic fragments, and I use elements of improvisation to create narratives that, by drawing attention to the nature of their construction, play a part in interrogating the roles of myth and fables in establishing and maintaining multiple power relations. So much of the work I make gives voice to archival materials. It puts them in dialogue with contemporary phenomena and ideas, while attempting to destabilize specific inherited conceptions around time, space, and identity. My work continually returns to the ways in which limitations in Enlightenment, modern Western thinking coincide with erasures of colonial histories and with more than human lives. So because I tell stories, I find, to my surprise, that I'm doing something which I never intended to do. I'm basically creating oral narratives a lot of the time, as well as narratives within text. And so what I'm doing, in a way, is repeating, replicating forms of artistic expression that have existed in Africa for millennia. And I find, to my surprise, that I'm doing similar things. So, about today, obviously our theme is our cultural connection to the waters. And I'm going to begin by talking about a narrative that's lodged itself in the national consciousness over the past few decades. It's an origin myth. And like origin myths, it purports to narrate the story of the arrival of a particular group of peoples in a particular place and time. It's a myth that purports to explain the origins of black people's presence in the UK. In centuries to come, when little children ask their grandparents how black people came to be here exactly, the grandparents might say, with reverence, that we, arrived on the Empire Windrush. And like many myths, it's grounded in fact, but it's also a plausible version of what might constitute the truth. It's a handy simplification of a less than orderly collection of phenomena, people, and events. The story acts as a confirmation of assumptions held from a particular perspective, grounded in the experiences of those who share that perspective. Its power derives from repetition, from the energy invested in that repetition. And although the Windrush wasn't the first ship to bring Caribbean peoples to Britain, on its arrival in Tilbury Docks in 1948, it was the one the media came to meet. And so the power of the narrative grew with each retelling and with the reprinting and circulation of images. In time, perhaps, the myth will take on the status of a sacred truth, and the vessel, the ship itself, might perhaps take on the character of a sacred object, endowed in its own right with transformative potential, with the capacity to transport people, if only in imagination, if only in spirit, to different times, places, and states of consciousness. Ships have always had that transformative power. That's their very essence, to take people on journeys. And crucially, they have the capacity to protect or to destroy. And it's why ship launching ceremonies designed to propitiate the powers that govern the sea are so important. It's why the Vikings sacrificed humans to the sea, and why British sailors would later sacrifice goats, all with the intention of appeasing the powerful forces that have the capacity to preserve life or to end it. In a recent performance piece I created called Antinomia, the one with the head, I described the other one with the long head. I describe a photo of my mother, newly arrived in the UK from Ghana in the 1960s. And in the photo, she's launching a ship in Tyneside on behalf of Ghana's Black Star Line. The Black Star Line was a shipping company set up by Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, upon independence from Britain in 1957. And it would be a key element of Ghana's ambitions to be a political and economic as well as a cultural force. Because at the time of independence, Ghana was one of the most culturally significant nation states in the world. The first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence, it was seen as a standard bearer, a flagship for all peoples around the world still living under the yoke of colonialism and the still present effects of slavery. Ghana represented redemption of a kind for diasporic peoples, for African Americans in particular who flocked there. And I mention in Antinomia the name of the shipping line, that the shipping line was borrowed from Marcus Garvey's failed version of the same idea. He launched a fleet in 1919 in the United States, itself set up as a kind of counter to the all-conquering White Star Line, which numbered the Titanic among its ranks. The first Black Star Line, like the second, was an attempt at forging economic self-reliance among black peoples, among the Americas, among Africa, among the Caribbean. And it was hoped to serve as a means to take diasporic peoples, displaced Africans, back to the motherland. And in so doing, it would reverse one of the most dominant narratives about the triangular relationship between Africa, the Americas, the Caribbean, and Europe. My parents' hometown is Cape Coast. It sits on the southern coast of Ghana, near the port of Elmina, where Portuguese sailors, sponsored by their newly created royal family, first landed in 1472. It is more or less due south from Greenwich, occupying the same meridian line, the prime meridian at 0 degrees longitude. There are castles in both Elmina and Cape Coast, where enslaved people were stored in dungeons before transportation. And these places serve as living testaments to the atrocities of the past. Although in recent years, they've also become commodified for the tourist trade among African Americans. In these places, the sacred and the profane mix with alarming alacrity. The most extreme profanity rendered sacred because of the power to transcend humanity, to go beyond the limits of what should be considered human behavior, behavior befitting of human beings. In an audio piece I made in 2019, The Beast, I wrote and performed poetic fragments that told obliquely of the tangled origins of Britain's relationship with Cape Coast, which became the centre of Britain's involvement with the slave trade in the 1660s. Later, I learned that from Cape Coast and the nearby port, Cromantin, many of the people who were enslaved and travelled across to the Caribbean, to Jamaica in particular, and who fled enslavement, were from Ghana, from the interior of Ghana, who were led off from Cape Coast. And they carried with them a degree of resilience, a degree of fortitude, a degree of resistance that carried through up till the present day, where remnants of the languages that they spoke, the Akan language that my family also speaks, are still present within the language they speak. And the food that they took with them, they still bear traces of where they came from. But I wrote The Beast because 2019, it's hard to believe, was a time when there was very little spoken about Britain's colonial past. What was spoken was done in a manner that served to obfuscate some of the realities of that relationship. And so I tried to bring some of the hidden links to life. And one of the things that I discovered was that the King Charles II, and his brother King James II, whose bedroom I walked through in the Queen's house just a few meters away, were both investors in the Royal African Company, which sought to achieve a monopoly of trade in humans between Britain and the African continent. I also learned that the Bank of England, Lloyd's Insurance Company, the establishment of paper money and the establishment of a coin called the guinea that was more valuable than the pound all emerged as ways to facilitate the trade between Africa and Britain in humans. So all of this also, I discovered more recently that where we stand in Greenwich, the centre of time and space, as defined by the notion of the meridian line, was also an idea that was inspired by a man called Malachi Postlethwaite, who drew a line between Britain and Africa on maps that he drew of Ghana, of the Gold Coast as it's called at the time. And these maps were published, and they were part of an effort to expand on colonial trade at the time. And he was a major propagandist for the Royal African Company. He believed that the trade in humans, the slave trade, would be the main means by which Britain could achieve economic power, which of course it did. So it's interesting to me that this place and this institution and the institutions that have been used to govern the world were in a way, in a manner of speaking, put in place by someone for whom slavery was so important. I won't be too long.
No, I think we're just enthralled, aren't we? And you've done all the research for us, so thanks.
So I found out also that slave ships were invariably circled by sharks as they moved through the water. Sharks could clearly smell what was on board, and they were regularly fed with corpses or the non-dead thrown overboard ships. In Turner's famous painting, The Slave Ship, based on a notorious incident when the captain of the ship, the Zong, threw living people overboard in order to lighten his load and claim insurance on his lost cargo, you can see the sharks circling a limb as it disappears under the water. However, as historian Marcus Rediker points out in his books, The Many-Headed Hydra, which he wrote with Peter Linebaugh, and The Slave Ship, A Human History, ships could either be places of despotic unfreedom for oppressed gang crews, or they could be genuine sites of liberatory potential. And it was in ships that you found the most international, the most cosmopolitan groups of working class people, called the motley crews. And it was on ships that black peoples from Africa or from the Americas could travel, could see the world, and could transform themselves. And this is illustrated in a fact that I read, which I've forgotten where I read it, but I read that most of the people, most of the leaders of what is called the black radical tradition, so people such as Equiano, such as Frederick Douglass, such as W.E. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, C.L.R. James, all these people spent time on ships, spent time traveling and working on ships. And that change that they undertook in terms of their own sense of themselves and where they were placed within the world was a consequence of their being able to meet and mix with sailors from around the world, to shift their position geographically and mentally at the same time. To come back to the story of the Windrush, clearly it's not fictional, but neither is it entirely the truth, but nonetheless it carries an important emotional charge. And it's a charge that was made all the more resonant at the time of the Windrush scandal in 2018. And I mention this because at that time I collaborated in a film, Infinity Minus Infinity, with artists, the Otolith Group, which was partly about the scandal. And this was a scandal in which people who had come to Britain legally with their parents as children from the Caribbean were suddenly facing deportation as a consequence of the British government's hostile environment policy. So we were making this film as a part of a poetic exploration of some of that crisis at the time. And one of the things that we also wanted to do was to place the notion of the hostile environment within a wider context and to draw links between the history of the Caribbean and Britain and the history of the genesis of climate change, the Anthropocene. So in this image which you see behind you, you have a many-headed deity played by myself in the film. And the many-headed deity is looking out upon melting ice caps, melting ice flows. And in doing so, this scene emerges just after, or just before, a moment when she has voiced some of the words of an enslaved woman, Mary Prince, who came over to the UK, or was brought over to the UK from the Caribbean in 1830. And she wrote an autobiography, and she was the first such woman to write an autobiography. So this character voices some of her words, because it was important to be able to go back in time and render the words of people who experienced some of the issues that we were talking about. But at the same time, she makes reference to the correlation between the capture of particulate matter, of carbon, within the atmosphere, which is captured within the frozen ice, and the trapping, the capturing of peoples within the hold of the ship. And as she talks about it, she starts feeling asphyxiated, and she declares several times, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And in saying this, she flips forward a year to a time in 2020 when those same words were expressed under similar conditions of asphyxiation. I don't need to tell you what that was about. At the time of making this film, all of us who made the film had read a book called A Billion Black Anthropocenes or None by Catherine Youssef. And it looked at the way the subject of geology, the study of the natural structures of the earth, of the water, were also emerged at the same time as efforts to stratify humans into different categories of being emerged. Efforts to codify some types of humans as mere matter, as mere resources, as parts of the natural world, as resources that can be expropriated and transported across water as raw materials or as commodities. So we wanted to explore those relations, but also to change some of the narrative. So the image of this many-headed goddess that you see is one that allows people to think again about the relations between humans and the natural earth, or the natural world. The deity's presence and her way of being in the world recognizes the aliveness, the animatedness, the importance and interrelatedness of all things. It's a perspective shared by Africans and all other peoples of color around the world. It doesn't posit a separation from the rest of life, but a belonging with other aspects of the planet, including the waters.
Wow. I feel like that's a mic drop, and there's so many questions that I have, I'm sure the panel have for you, but I just want everyone just to share their work and then we can come back together. But thank you, Esi, for that. Wow. So we're moving on to Dr. Hannah Catherine Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the name Foxy Moron. Can I ask where that came from?
Yeah, you can. I mean, Foxy Moron, the name, I started using that in about 2010 in a performance I did on my master's, because I was just sort of needing something to help me with my stage fright that I was experiencing at the time. And I wanted to play upon the fact that I always play with language. I play with words. I very much see like the English language as,
like DJ Spooky says, this code that we've been forced to download in terms of like alienation from our mother tongues, our grandmother tongues, our ancestral tongues. So I mistrust it and try and play it at its own game. So foxymoron is playing on the word oxymoron, which means like a baby grand piano, or like, you know, I'll be along shortly, or those kind of phrases that just jar. And then it's kind of also playing on like the idea of blaxploitation, like, you know, Foxy Brown, Foxy, like
Cleopatra.
Yeah, all of them. So foxymoron, that's where that came from, really. And then I just kind of, stick with it.
Do you think if you don't know your ancestral mother tongue that you'll never fully be connected to your culture?
Oof. Thought we were saving questions to the end. No.
No, sorry, because you just talked about language. I just wondered what your thoughts were.
I actually do talk about that a bit. I've got a solo exhibition on at the moment, little plug.
Plug it.
It's called Ode to Chiron, the Wounded Healer.
Oxymoron there. Wounded and healing.
Exactly. It's on at Mimosa House Gallery in Holborn until the 23rd of December, but I do explore that and ask my grandmother, who's in the show, a question about that. And I talk about what it felt like to sing in Zulu for the first time, which was like me finding my voice. But we can chat about all that stuff. I feel like...
Sorry, yes.
No, it's kind of good. We've got to go with the flow, especially if we're talking about water.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I kind of wanted to show some images that... Yeah, I use that word there, composite, because I think when we're talking about water, everything is layered, you know? And I was going to try and play some sound, but now I'm kind of like just disrupting myself by trying to do it. We'll see if it comes up.
Your voice is an instrument as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a big part of what it is that I do. But this image, it's a composite that's come around and around, and I've used again and again within various films. And the background of the image, which is, I guess is like the blue, and then you can see like the white waves. That is part of a mast of a boat in Bridgetown, Barbados, that I filmed myself on a little camera. And it kind of, the ripples of the water made it look as though it's a sound wave. Then I put over the top of that an animation of a sound wave from Disney's Fantasia. There's this moment in that film where the sound wave is introduced as a character itself, and there's this kind of like the conductor being like, oh, and like, don't be shy, here's the sound wave, and it comes on, and then it's just this, I think they'd show it vertically, and then he's like, well, this is the harp, this is the bassoon, and it shows like the different frequencies. But I flipped it on its side and kind of made it a line, again, playing with idea, word, sound waves. And then on top of that is some, like an animation that I lifted off YouTube of DNA. So this kind of layering up is my way of like being like, we carry the memories of the water, the traumas of the water in our DNA. And we are also made up of water, at least 60%.
I thought it was like 90%. Richard, you're the engineer in your house.
Definitely more than 60%.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like 90,
I think it's about 80, 90%.
Oof.
Yeah.
Really? Even if you're a bit dehydrated like I am?
Yeah.
The irony, isn't it?
That is wild, because like I was doing research today and it was like, we are at least 60%.
60.
But
Then
then
more like 90.
Yeah, okay, well, everyone stay hydrated. So I wanted to show this image because when I'm building the layers of my videos, it gets extremely saturated because I use that many layers, because I do think that that's kind of, for me, in the way that I make video and the way that I make sound, it's the only real way I can kind of like get everything that I'm trying to say in, which is just to use the layers. But maybe we can go to the next slide.
Definitely. This ain't meant to be question time, but you just said about like the DNA and how we carry that. Again, Richard, you're the science guy in here. When did we even learn how to read DNA? Was it in the 90s?
No, I think that was
the 80s.
Or maybe even.
So I just think it's even interesting that even from a science point of view, it's only since the 80s we've been able to even read the DNA code, and there's still so many codes we don't know, let alone the DNA that's within us that we still don't know our history. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a really good point.
It is. And this is a still from a video that's on at the show called Ode to Diasporas. I'm doing a little intervention with a little bit of sound because the video is backed with sound. Not this sound, but sound in general. And you might not be able to hear it that well, but it kind of changes everything. It already feels a lot more epic, what I'm saying. That's me playing theremin, synthesizer, all kinds of other bits and bobs. And I improvise. And I'm often thinking about the things that I'm showing imagery of and trying to conjure that energy, the sorrow, the I don't even know what to call it. And that's why we turn to music, because we don't have to try and depict it. But this, as you can hopefully see, because it is so layered, you can see the whisper of that previous image that I showed, right? So this is me showing the layers. And then on top of that, does anyone know whose body that is? Does anyone recognise? Yeah, Beyonce.
Beyonce, yeah.
From the iconic 2017 Grammys performance where she was pregnant.
In the gold.
In the gold. And this is, you know, quite a close zoom in. But I was wanting to, this kind of section of Ode to Diasporas in my head when I was like, you know, making it, I call it the birth of capitalism. And I'd never, there wasn't any footage that I could acquire, appropriate, that had this power of this body. And I was thinking about the soundscape of the womb, the water, the body, and then you can't really see it in this image, maybe you can a little bit, but there's a world map, a bit like, it kind of shows like the triangular trade. So it's layered on top of that. Again, hard to do a screenshot from because I was thinking like, how do I kind of show how everything was, it's all kind of linked in this really sort of cellular way, our relationship with the water. Maybe we'll have the next still, if that's all right, Liz. Oh. And then this is another still from Diasporas, but it's another image that I've returned to again and again. This is footage, very dramatic footage, looking up at a statue of Bussa. And Bussa was an enslaved Nigerian man in Barbados that led the rebellion of 1816 on Bailey's plantation in St. Philip. Bussa was a ranger, so that means that he had like loads of different jobs and he had lots of privileges for somebody in his position. So he was able to arrange meetings and essentially on Easter Sunday 1816 led a rebellion Ireland-wide. He had heard of Haiti through Nanny Grigg, you know, a kind of elder woman that was also on Bailey's plantation, who I need to do more work on because it's often the women that we kind of continue to kind of, yeah, it's a continuation of them being suppressed. But Bussa led this rebellion and it was one of the big three. So there was Demerara a few years later, and there was Jamaica. But this image of this statue, and then again layered up, we've got waves in the background. That's an overhead shot of the Atlantic Sea. Like, again, these waves, and then on top of that, there's smoke, which touches on what you were saying, Esi, about obfuscation, smoke screens. Smoke is a big thing in my work because it's always like you can't see it clearly. So, yeah, another way of using layers. Yeah, and the moon, because it was a full moon on Bussa's rebellion, because I like to check the moon. Yeah. The next slide, please. So the sounds that you're hearing now, this is the kind of setup that I use to perform. It's like Living with Ghosts. This was in Hanover Square, outside, pretty epic. And I use all these instruments. You can see the synthesizer, the Korg, there's a drum machine. I always have my laptop with my Destroy White Supremacy sticker, which is merchandise from the amazing band Divide and Dissolve. And then this instrument here on the right that looks like a crown, it looks like an artwork, it looks like something I'd never ever seen before. It's called a waterphone. And it's, yeah, you can see it has all these prongs on it, and then it has this kind of central sort of shaft that you hold. You can pour water down that, and then you can use different tools, mallets to hit it, to bang the bottom like a drum, and then you move it around and it shifts between all the different pitches. And I kind of joke that I use the waterphone to call the ancestors. So I use that to open most performances that I do because it sounds otherworldly. It uses this thing, water, and it's often used in horror films. And it's kind of like, as is the theremin, I always end up using these instruments that are used in horror films to actually take us away from the horrors of the traumas that we hold in our bodies towards healing through sound, because that is what vibrates with us. It vibrates all this 60 or 90% water that we actually are, you know? And then we can have the next slide. And recently, I've been doing playlists, listening sessions, which I call embodied listening sessions, using singing bowls, which are tuned to the frequency of 432 hertz. Little quick chat about that. Most music that we hear has a reference point of A as 440 vibrations per second, but if you tune it down ever so slightly to 432 hertz, there's a lot of chat about how, you know, this is kind of a pseudoscience, but for me, I feel the difference, that 432 is more in tune with the resonating frequencies of the planet, of the brain, of, you know, the organic matter. So
it's 808, 808
808, TR808.
No, I just wondered if that was like a frequency.
808 will be a frequency, but I can't tell you what it is at this moment. But using these singing bowls, which, like I said, are tuned down, so A reference point is 432. Then I play through speakers, PA system, a playlist of sounds and music. So I'll use all different kinds of things like birdsong, whistling frogs I like to use to take us to the Caribbean, or, you know, crackling fire I also used because we had a fire. You know, I'm trying to play on these soundscape memories, but also musics. And what happens is I play the music and then I use the bowls to pick up on frequencies to resonate. So it becomes this kind of triangulation of bowls, speakers, and bodies. So again, trying to use this kind of body water, cellular nature. And it's been incredibly powerful. Like, on separate occasions, I've had people being taken back. They've said they've experienced being a baby in the womb. And that happened, I did that on 2 different days, out there in Mull, where you have to get loads of boats and trains. So, yeah, all these ways of trying to explore our connection to the water through sound, that feedback thing, to resonate through the waters of our body, to heal. Yeah, that's the end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Doesn't sound like the end, just the beginning, really. But thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to Richard.
All right.
And I won't be naughty like I was with Hannah and ask questions in between. Apologies. I will let you go on.
That's fine. I would stand up and walk a little bit, so if you don't mind.
Should we get everyone else to stand up? Because we've heard quite
No,
a
it's fine.
You right? Do you?
Yeah.
Can everyone see him though I'm here? Should I move? Yeah, let's move. Yeah, should we move? I feel like he's going to do a proper presentation.
No, it's not going to be a proper presentation. I want it to be more...
Just come to the right so we can show you're in the sun.
Discussion. All right, that's fine. So, it's good to see so many of you here. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon for us to have this discussion. My presentation, I've divided it into 2. The first part is to give you more or less background to the cultural significance of water in Ghana, where I grew up. And the second part will be me talking about selected pieces like of my work. So I will try and do it within 10 minutes. So please, if I go over, please don't bear with me. I'll be skipping over so many things because Esi and Dr. Hannah have covered quite a lot, so I'll be skipping quite a lot. So, as Liz rightly introduced me, my name is Richard Mensah. I grew up, I was born in Ghana, grew up in Ghana, and moved here 20 years ago. So, usually what I tell people is that I think I'm more aligned with Ghanaian culture than British culture because I grew up in Ghana and only moved here 20 years ago. So the first part is more or less to give you that background of the cultural significance of water in Ghana. So where I come from in Ghana, I come from the Akan tribal group. In Ghana, water bodies are culturally very significant. In our culture, almost every water body in my culture in Ghana is regarded as like a deity or places where the gods and spirit lives. So as a result of that, they are revered, they are respected, they are protected. And these deities do have, because, they are gods and spirits, and, we believe in them, we believe that, they should have a name, so most of them do have names, or almost all of them do have names. They've got their own traits. They've got their own likes. That is, if you do, follow their likes, most of the time you are blessed by the water god. If you go against them, which is the dislikes, most of the time prescribed as taboos of the water bodies, then curses, will come to you. When I was growing up, I think these were, let me give you some examples of some of the things that you couldn't do, around water. And I will tell you, my observation on the importance, of those. So, many water bodies in different communities where, I come from, where communities do settle, you wouldn't settle closer or at a certain distance. You would have to move or settle at a certain distance from the water body. The reason is that you don't really want to disturb the god who lives in that water. Secondly, or one other example, is that you cannot do certain activities within the water or closer to the water. Anything that will be polluting to the water cannot be done because the spirit or the god needs a clean place to live. Another example is that in growing up around water bodies, for example, you wouldn't be allowed to go for fishing on some days or in some months of the year. When we grew up and we began to really question that, to understand the meaning of those, should I call them regulations or laws prescribed by the community leaders and the fetish priests, we realized that they were done to protect these water bodies. They were done to preserve the ecology of the water bodies. So they had some significance. As I've already mentioned, water is culturally very significant in the day-to-day lives of people, in Ghana. So from the time that we are born to the time that we pass on, it plays so many significant roles of our lives. In my culture, we believe that if you are born on this planet, you are here for a while. So this place is just a place where we are transiting. So we are coming from a different world to this planet. Then we are living. We will leave this planet and go to another world. Therefore, everything that we find on this planet or in this planet we would have to be protected. It's not for us. We protect it and leave it for the future generations to also protect it, and we will live to like a different life. So when we come into this world, the first thing that we do in my culture is you are washed and welcome into the world. That's the first thing that you do. You will not be allowed to hold a baby that is not washed, because we believe that they've come from a different world. They need to be welcomed into our world. Therefore, we they are given a wash, then accepted into the family. We also believe that 7 days, if the baby survives 7 days after being born, then it means that they are indeed here to stay. There are certain beliefs that if a baby dies before 7 days, in Akan culture, then it means that they were sent by the God just to have a peek and go, not really here to stay. But if you live for 7 days, then that is when you are named. So in the naming ceremony, water plays a significant role. Water, the elder or whoever is naming you, will dip their hands in water onto your tongue, say something. The significance of that is for the child to know the difference between truth, or between good and evil, more or less. So that is the significance of that. In different cultures in Ghana, it signifies life as well. So it's got different things. Again, as I've said, there are many things which, cultural, significance, of water, which I cannot go through everything. But one of the first things that if you visit anyone from the Akan culture, what they will give you is they will, first of all, offer you water to drink. The significance is that it signifies friendship. And also, if the visitor takes the water, drinks it, then it builds that trust, that they trust you. And last but not least, related to that, will be that my mom would always say that when a visitor comes to the house, the reason that they will offer them water is that you don't know where or who is being chasing that visitor. They believe that the visitor may have been fleeing, something. Therefore, when they come or they arrive, they need to be offered something to quench their thirst. So it's culturally significant. Then, as you pass through life, so many things do happen. Then, at the end, when you're about to pass on to another life, again, the last thing that we would do is to bathe the body before they are given the farewell to transit into their other life. So, culturally, water plays so many different or significant things within the Ghanaian culture. And Esi did mention one of them, which I really found it really intriguing, that the Vikings used to sacrifice things. In Ghana, we've got things like that, whereby if you are crossing certain water bodies with certain objects, you do have to make sacrifices before you can cross. For example, if certain kings or rulers are crossing certain water bodies, they do have to perform certain rituals before they can cross, because they believe that those waters do have powers. They are deities, they are spirits. Therefore, you do have to appease them before you cross. Otherwise, if you go against it, it's a taboo and there will be consequences. So, significant. I'm not really going to go into everything because there are quite a lot within that. So, I will go into the second part of my presentation and more or less describe some of the inspiration behind some of my work. It's more or less research, personal reflection, observation, talking with people. So I've selected just a few. So as a black man and as an immigrant as well, I still consider myself as an immigrant after 20 years of living here. So if you look at our relationship with water, as a black man, we've always had a very complex should I say, fraught like relationship like with like water. It's very complex, to really describe it, because we can start from the middle passage, which Esi did mention, and I think it was mentioned in yesterday's like presentation, through to segregated like pools in America and in many different parts of the world, to access to good swimming waters or like water bodies that can be, people can swim in, including outdoor like swimming pools, to even the most recent migrant crisis, which, has led to many migrants losing their lives crossing the Mediterranean. And more recently, the channels as well. So I think as an immigrant and as a black person, it's not been, I would say, I would describe it as a very complex like relationship with water. So I've covered like some of them. So these 2 weeks, let's first of all look at the Igbo landing, which happened in around 1803. It was a group of enslaved West Africans shipped to Savannah, Georgia. They were then sold on to an island, in Georgia. They overpowered the boat and drowned the captors, and they ran the boat ashore, got off the boat, and they really didn't think that they wanted to go into slavery. So according to eyewitnesses' account, which, like varies, I have to add that, they started like singing, led by their chief priest. They started like singing in Igbo language, saying that the water spirit that brought us to Savannah in Georgia will take them back, And they sang, they chanted, then they walked back into the water to commit mass suicide in Denver Creek. What I really wanted to explore within that historical event was more or less, I did quite a lot of research on that, trying to find references, and I wanted to provide a different view to what was already in existence. I wanted to feel their anguish, at the same time see the strength and the courage and the resilience of the men and women who made that difficult decision to turn their back on slavery and walk back and pay the ultimate price with their lives. That is what I really wanted to capture. So I wanted to capture the resilience of that men and women. The next painting that you can see on the right is a series that I did called See Us Rise. So See Us Rise plays on the middle passage, and again reflects on the recent migrant crisis as well, crossing the Mediterranean, and also more recently the Channel crossings as well. I wanted to show the strength, again, the resilience of those that have lost their lives doing that, making that desperate journey. That is what I really wanted to. The message that I wanted to convey with that painting and this painting is that even in adversity, when people are oppressed, suppressed, they will still rise. That is why we are here. That is the message and a painting. So these 2 paintings are called Lost of Self. I think being an immigrant, sometimes I think we are overwhelmed, or I am overwhelmed by so many things. So this is a painting that I was really reflecting on the many things happening around us. for example, we've got 24/7 news. We've got a lot of our attention is captured by social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You know, when you bury your head on your phone, you can be lost for ages without noticing some of the nicer things happening like around us. So I wanted to play on the meaning like of water here. I'm a scientist like as well, so water is, you know, the most abundant like resource like on Earth, if not like one of the most abundant like resources. So I wanted the symbolism like of the water here is to more or less show us the plentifulness or the abundance of where we are. We've got so much happening like around us that we don't notice or we don't live like in a moment. Like there is, you know, some like a young man here playing music, but if you look at the like other characters like within the painting, everybody is stuck, you know, like on their phone, head buried, like not even realizing what is happening around them. The bridge there is quite symbolic. I think that is, I was going back into the culture like in Ghana whereby we are just here. So it is more or less connecting the two worlds. Before being born and when like we pass on. And the water is just keeps on like moving. It's like whatever, you know, like what is like happening like around us, and also the movement like of that I think we should take a little bit of time with everything going on like around us and notice some of the nice things, you know, going on like around us. So that is what the loss of self is trying to like reflect on, that we shouldn't walk just through life, but look around us. These two paintings and maybe the next two was inspired by someone that I met who is an American with a Ghanaian like heritage. I was more or less wanted to recognize the fact that we've had a very difficult, complex relationship with water. We are here now. What is the way forward? So I wanted to reframe that story for our generation and for the future like generation. You know, we've had the Middle Passage, we've had segregation, we've had lack of like swimming pools and all that, but what do we do now? I wanted to use this same entity, which is water, that was once feared by our like ancestors, and also water that, you know, people have been, you know, separated from or have lacked like access to, use this same entity to more or less like empower us through like water sports. So when I met this guy, this like American guy, he was thinking and using water like in the same way that he wanted to use water as a tool to empower young people, give them skills, give them places whereby they can go, like relax, just coming together as brothers. That is why we have brotherhood, and also like standing tall and saying that, do you know what, we are no longer scared of this like entity, but we're going to make use of this entity to like our benefit. So that is where Cool Runnings is just playing on that Cool Runnings like movie, and also brotherhood coming together to use this same like entity for good. The last but not least, paintings are inspired by, I think Esi did hinted on that, the Year of Return, which was an event celebrated across Africa. Mainly, I think a lot of black people like in the diaspora went back to Ghana and in like to other like African countries to celebrate 400 years departing the African continent. So the first one is called The Last Dance. So that was inspired by a video that this actor, I think Anthony Anderson, like he shot like in Ghana when African Americans who have not been back to the motherland or the African continent woke up 1st of January, like in Ghana. They were so excited. They went back to the Atlantic like Ocean, like in Ghana, and really enjoyed themselves. That, do you know what? When like we were taking like it was like a sad event. Now like we are, you know, like we have like returned, and we're going to see the positive. Like we're going to like enjoy that. So I really wanted to capture that in The Last Dance, and that piece is called The Return of the King. Again, the Return of the King plays on the many kings, chiefs, you know, men that were taken during the slave trade. But here's the case: the king is now connected back to the motherland, and he's been like welcome. The significance like of the umbrella in Ghanaian culture is, you know, cannot be like underplayed. It's really like significant. When you are outside with someone holding an umbrella, like, you know, over your head, it shows your importance, you know, like in society. So I really wanted to capture that the king has returned, you know, back to the land that like he was taken from, and connecting with that, looking, you know, like into the future to connect, build, you know, provide more like, you know, like opportunities for the African continent, and also like people like within the like diaspora. So I think that is the last of the pieces. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and hopefully like if you've got any more questions, Liz will take over and we'll try and answer. Thank you.
Wow. I was really enjoying just being in the audience, right, not listening to us down. Please, panel, could you come back to the sofa? Wow. There's so many questions. And just again, apologies to Foxy Mora for just jumping in, because I wanted to ask you those questions at a time. But I just think it's what's really interesting is that the connection is water, and via, you know, Esi's research, your use of sound, Richard's use of just imagery, we've come kind of full circle. And I guess I have so many questions, but just one thing I want to say to you guys is, I feel like water has gone from this spiritual birth to an almost oppressive force to one that's now healing. And I just wondered that how can we continue to change the narrative of water, particularly in our communities, where even though Richard has kind of left it on a hopeful note, people still feel, do still feel oppressed by water. People still don't understand the magic of the healing. And I just wondered what your thoughts and reflections were on that.
I can go.
Go for it.
So, my own relationship with water, and I'm thinking about swimming, maybe because of these beautiful paintings of Richard's right there, setting the scene. But yeah, I struggled with swimming because my dad had water trauma from something that happened to him when he was young, and like a friend of his drowned. This is in Barbados, he's a little boy. Because I remember going back to visit the place where this happened, and like being young, being about 10, which was, you know, mirroring his age and like kind of absorbing that, I guess, vicarious trauma. And then learning to swim myself, but having eczema, and then it kind of being like this thing that didn't, like the chlorine that they put in the water was bad for my skin, but then salt water was good for my skin, but I was scared to swim. So it's all very like complicated.
How about your hair? Was that ever an issue?
We hadn't even got enough time to go into
hair,
issues
water.
of hair.
Yes, of course.
But then jump forward to 2017, going to Barbados for the first time as an adult, dipping my toes in the water, getting acquainted with it, but then going back in 2019, getting more into the water, but still afraid to swim, and then jump forward to January this year, going to the Republic of Barbados, and I swam in the water for the first time.
Ooh.
So this thanks, thank you, yes. So like, I feel like a lot of my healing has been to do with that, and being lucky enough to have gone 3 times as an adult now, you know, and making my dad come as well, and like everyone just sort of like getting in the water and what that feels like, and not being, I don't know, there's still fear. Of course there's going to be fear, especially with like forces, this abundant like force of nature that is sublime, it is scary, it is beautiful. But trusting it and trusting yourself and knowing that whatever that experience is, you're giving it a new narrative, and you're rewiring your brain and you're rewiring your associations with that matter.
I just think it's really interesting in how you described your relationship with water. It's almost like a timeline of like Barbados' freedom, because by the time you swam in water was when once Barbados became the Republic.
And my dad left in '66, which I think was the year of Bajan independence.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, so it's interesting that how that is transcended. And Esi, just going to you. Obviously, you've done some prolific research. You know, even like your family. Oh, is it wine? Is it wine o'clock?
I'm so sorry. It's sparkling water. The power of water.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. But no, please. Speaking of water, dehydration. Esi, obviously, like, talk about your family and where your family came from. A very prominent part of Ghana, which was essentially the heart of where our people were moved on, shall I say, by the Middle Passage. What is your connection to water? And have you seen, and from your research, has anything that Dr. Hannah has said or Richard said spoke to you?
I mean, am I still...
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, all of it spoke to me. I mean, I find water traumatic. Not for historical reasons, for my own personal physiological reasons. I'm the sort of person who enters into a swimming pool and I sink, you know? I swim for a few meters and then I sink. And there are various people who don't believe that I sink. And I know there is a story, there's an assumption.
About bone density.
Exactly, black people have high bone density, so we can't float. So basically, my relationship with water is complex because each time I sink, I can swim underwater for a little bit, but then I start suffocating. So I have to come up for air. So I can never relax around water, ever. However, there have been times, there was a time I went to Portugal, and knowing of relationships between Portugal and Ghana historically, I decided to go to the edge of a particular piece of water. I think it was the Mediterranean coast or the Atlantic coast, one of the two. And I stood there and I paid silent homage to those who'd moved on before me. And before I did that, I asked, I guess, a random Portuguese person whether he or anyone else recognised, you know, the role Portugal had played in the slave trade. He said, what are you talking about? And I was I was upset, you know, I was taken aback because I thought it would be common currency, which it clearly wasn't.
I mean, even being Nigerian, Lagos. It's
Exactly.
Lagos, like it's a Portuguese
That's where I
name.
was. I was in Lagos, basically the same place, you know. So I did my own healing ceremony in my own way, quietly to myself. Didn't tell anyone. But in a way, that's how I see water. I'm terrified of it, but I treat it as this absolutely powerful entity that can bring calm and, you know. I don't know, that I said it can take you somewhere. Whenever I need to calm down in any way, when I need to shake anything off or release things, I go to the edge of water and I'm there and I listen to it and I absorb the sound. I absorb the feeling of the waves. And that's how I come through things, always. You know, even when I'm at home in the sort of middle of the afternoon, I'll go to the edge of water. I live near canals, you know, live near reservoirs, and I'll go there as a way just to recollect myself. But swimming, no.
It's interesting though, something that you find fearful is also giving you some form of healing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, I'm wary of it,
Yeah.
but I find it extremely, what's the word? You know, I don't even know what
You
the word
revere
is.
it. Would you say you revere it? Like you see
I
it?
kind
as
of
a-
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, meditative.
Yeah,
But it's
also.
bigger than that. You know, it
Yeah.
does something to the body. It changes the cells when you're near water.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, as I will spend time in calmness with it, but I won't interact with it in any other way. So it's kind of weird, yeah.
Do you think this is, Richard, do you think this is unique to the Black experience? Our very complicated relationship with water?
Yeah, I think as Dr. Hannah and Esi have said, is, you know, it's not just one factor. It's many different, like, you know, like factors. It's got, for me, it's, you know, some of them is, you know, could be just personal, as like Esi is saying. Some of them could be just social, like economic, like issues that people cannot even afford to have, you know, access to this, like swimming pools. I always go back to the fact that when I was growing up in Ghana, the city that I grew up in had only 2 public swimming pools. One was in a hotel, and one was the university's like swimming pool. Even with that, you do have to pay to really have like access to that. So as a young Black boy growing up, not having enough money like to do that, how could I, you know? There was no way that I could even get near water, let alone learn how to swim. So it gets back to, for me, like it comes back to making sure that people have got like access to water, and they're comfortable like around like water. But I believe that once people have got access and they get used to being around it, they will become comfortable. Because I remember the first time that I got into water, more or less, I sank straight away, and I was really, it's like very, very uncomfortable. It's like, you know. But once I began to do it more and more and relaxed, I got used to it. So that is why I think the work that this friend of mine is doing is, you know, really struck a chord like with me, that he's actually gone back to Ghana. He started water polo in Ghana and in Ethiopia. He's recently started another one in San Diego in California for like refugees, you know, giving them these key skills, people that have never swum before. But here's the case now, you know, like in Ghana, what is most interesting is that most of these kids that were like me, that have never had the opportunity to learn how to swim, they use everything. If you see the videos, it's amazing. You go to the beach, use local materials to, you know, to create, you know, their goalposts, you know, for like water polo. Use everything. Get this case like into water, train them from its own like resources, and it's just amazing. And if you see the difference in the confidence in these young men and women, like in Ghana and in like Ethiopia, and more like recently in California, like it's amazing. Some of them are now working as lifeguards in hotels, like in Ghana, therefore earning something.
I think that's amazing, but I just wish there was more of those opportunities throughout. Yeah. And I know I keep on coming back to the same question, but I just think it's very fascinating that, as you know, people from the diaspora, we have a very complex issue, you know, experience with this. Like for me, I learnt to swim because my school allowed us to swim. My dad learnt to swim. He was self-taught in his 50s. I remember years and years ago, I went to Senegal and I stayed like on a beach hut. Like on the beach, I thought we were romantic, but I was scared because when you hear, like, just again connecting to Dr. Hannah, what you said about your performance, like when you hear the sound of the sea at night, like I don't know if it's talking. I definitely wasn't high, definitely wasn't drinking. Like it was talking to me. Do you know what I'm saying? It was fierce, it's ferocious, and I just wondered how our ancestors experienced that as they were coming into the new world. And again, about how we need to release ourselves of that trauma that has come from water and go back to celebrating it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So just more like, I guess, my reflections on that. But as we sort of draw to the end, I just want to bring it out to the audience who may have a few questions. So is there anybody that would like to ask a question or provide a reflection? Yes, your hand is up. We have a spare. We have a spare place on the couch. Come and sit with us. Come on, we're allowed to now. Come on, you might as well. And you have my mic. Come on. Guys, give a round of applause, man. He's brave. Come on. Hi. What's your name? Emmanuel. God's with us. My brother's name. Go for it. Ask your question. Sorry, you didn't think about that. It's fine. Don't worry.
No, it's not that. I just didn't expect to be up here. Thank you. I really appreciate this. I have a lot of favourite subjects, and water is one of my favourite subjects. So I have a question, but before the question, I'll just list off some of my trains of thought, because I'm not that confident in how well I can ask questions. So just bear with me if you've got a minute. Okay, so I'm thinking about when I first went to Nigeria, about 7 years old, and I saw a well, and I fetched water from a well, and how deep that was, and carried it on my head to mimic the girls who I was going to pick up with. That's one thought. And I'm thinking about how I live in Thamesmead, and which is a place which is surrounded by water. And I'm thinking about Paul Robeson's song, Old Man River, which is about water. And then I'm thinking about Wade in the Water, that song, and how there's a lot of resistance to water just from, I just wade in the water. And then I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a friend who her dad was a swimming teacher, and she said that her dad said, you can't learn how to swim, you only forget. So when he was teaching them how to swim, he just pushed them in the water and they were swimming. And then I'm thinking about sinking and how water is so responsive to any tension that you have, you will sink. And I'm thinking about the psyche of swimming and black people. Then I'm thinking about these women in Gabon called the Baka tribe, and they have this thing called water drumming, where they're playing with the water now. So we went from tension to the water, now playing with the water, and it's really nice. But then now I'm thinking about Taoism and the West, and how the Chinese their whole basis of spirituality was based on the Tao, which is non-resistance to water and flow, let it flow, and how the West has romanticized flow through someone like Bruce Lee, where Bruce Lee says, be like a cup, be like water, and he makes it like a martial art thing. So then I'm thinking about the position of Africa as a unmentioned center. So you have the East, Taoism, which is saying, yes, water is, this ebb, flow, non-resist. Then you have the West, who have a god of water from the Greek myth Poseidon, which is meant to be this god of the water, kind of, but he's a bit sinister, but anyway, and how, Africa seems to be the center, but the relationship between water and Africa is always about exporting some sort of upheaval or whatnot, and how the memory before is missing, even though there's fishermen and swimmers in Africa. So then I'm thinking about the physics of water and how I don't understand this still, but water is a particle, but water, I think, is also waves, which is crazy, because that means it's one of the only things that there's no duality, it has both sides. It has like you mentioned, smoke or vapor, it's heavy, but it can be light. It's like really, the science of it is, they don't know, by the way, they don't know. But then I'm thinking about how space is vast, but water is deep, and how much of water we haven't actually seen. Because when you go so down deep in there, it becomes black. And ironically, we're talking about black people's relationship to water, and science fiction is always about space. But then I'm thinking about, I'm nearly down to this, don't worry. I'm thinking about Yemoya, the mermaid for the Yoruba people, and Mami Waters. And then I'm thinking about a sculpture that I've recently seen by Kwame Akoto-Bamfo, which is, again, using on the Evo landing, but the heads of the water bank, and how they're working with the tides, as in sometimes you don't see it, and then all of a sudden, maybe you go down there and the tide is out, and you just see all these heads, and how that illustrates the truth, but what that does to your relationship if you are going to that water. And then I'm thinking about Fela Kuti's song, where he says, water, no get enemy. And I played it to my friend, and he said, ironically, this song has so much fire to it. And I just said, wow. I mean, it's crazy to say that a song about respecting the water, one of the first lines he says is, if a baby wants to take a bath, it's water you're going to use. If you want to cook soup, it's water you're going to use. So that ever-presence of water, the way he says it. But then I'm thinking about how Africa seems to have embraced fire and dynamism from enthusiasm and charisma, but seems to have neglected water. And then I'm thinking about Cool Runnings and how radical that was, how the director really used, flip it on its head. These Jamaicans that have never seen ice, make them champions, go to the Olympics for ice. So I'm thinking about surfing, and how surfing is like a really nice balance between being in the water and underwater. So here's my question. So here's my question, and I've tried to write it down in more comprehensive terms. It seems, in my current comprehension, that there exists a traumatic relationship with water that has been trivialized by pop culture and created a misalignment in our perceptions and relationship between water. African people seem to have favored characteristics of fire, especially because of the expression and the dynamism, which can be contrasted to the Orient, who use the Tao as a balance of the two. Like Cool Runnings, thinking radically, and using our position of the diaspora, what do you think are some radical, pragmatic methods we can take to reprogram our relationship to water?
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I think I need to learn how to condense.
No, you just given a talk. It's brilliant.
No, we need to all of that. Honestly,
It's brilliant. Is that one?
Yes.
Guys, I think he's earned his spot to stay up here. I think he's earned his spot. You've earned the spot to stay up here, Emmanuel. Do you mind staying up here with us for a bit? Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you so much. So, guys, how can we radically change?
No, yeah. Sorry, Emmanuel. Please repeat the final bit of the question.
The final line.
Yeah.
How can we, thinking pragmatically, I've got it here. One chance.
How can we change our relationship?
Yeah. So thinking pragmatically, like Cool Runnings, thinking radically, using our position of the diaspora. What do you think are some pragmatic methods we can take to reprogram the relationship we have to water?
Richard, you can start.
Hello. Yeah, I think that was quite a deep, take, like on water. It's quite a very loaded question. Because I would straight away, being an artist, I would straight away jump straight to the education part, education and opportunities for, education for people that, for education for people around, like on water, history, like other uses apart from like the trauma. And also opportunities that can be gained like from water needs to be really be taught like really well. Then also for me it's about creating the opportunities or providing people the like access, to water. It could be, I think even like if I come down to immigrant like communities, because I'm an like immigrant, most of the time I'll just go there. Our like experience, even if schools are providing it for free as like extra curriculum, most parents as like immigrants are, they wouldn't even have the time to take their kids for those kind of practice or like lessons. So there's definitely from my part socioeconomic aspect to that. So as long like if we can find a way to balance that, make sure that people have got the means to get their kids access, then I think like we'll make some progress.
So social, economic, breaking down those barriers. Esi, what would you say?
Okay, obviously I'm talking off the top of my head, but you talked about, I think, the way popular culture has, I think, simplified or mistranslated the relationship to water. I don't know specifically what you're referring to, but I think possibly there are ways in which popular culture could change that narrative. So, for example, making use of water in ways that are benign within films, within television shows, within music. And obviously that I think that's part of creating another sort of mythos in relation to water. I think most mythoses related to water are about trauma, as you said, for African diasporic peoples. But they don't have to begin and end there, And as we've all expressed, there are aspects about water that are healing, that are about recovery and about hope and about transition, as I was saying, about transformation. And I think to cut short of that or to go in a tangent, I think things like Richard's work here, which show people engaging with water, interacting with water in a totally non-traumatic way, are really powerful, as ways to communicate that there are other ways, other ways of being with this, hitherto somewhat hostile water body. I think we just have to get used to thinking and looking at it in ways that are always about life, death, drowning, horror, which at the moment, sadly, are the ways many of us, if not all of us, but many of us think about it.
Changing that narrative.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, thank you for your epic flowing question, rambling. I love that because, it's not really linear, any of the stuff that we're chatting about in so many ways, so thank you. I feel like pragmatic sort of methods, conversations like this, and also recognising that it is a process that's durational, and yeah, Richard, education, but also it's so interesting that we are here at this Maritime Museum and, having this conversation in 2022, but this is part of that. I feel like this here and now is part of that. I was also thinking a bit about Drexciya, the collective sort of band, musicians that, use techno music as a way of creating that dance environment, this haptic sort of reimagining of how we can be sort of together and give this idea of, the name comes from those souls who went overboard under the sea, and gives, in the Middle Passage, and gives that a new narrative where they kind of grew gills and lived underwater, and then they make this incredible techno music that you kind of just dance, and it makes you dance, and then you kind of create a new sort of feeling of community togetherness through that. So there's lots of transformative new mythoi. I say new,
Evolving.
Evolving.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's the fact that we call bodies of water, and we are bodies of water, and that even like, because I am scared of boats still. That's definitely a thing. Like, it just feels. I feel like that's the cellular, intergenerational
That's really
thing.
Interesting because in Alberta Whittle's film, she said that how the sea is the graveyard and the ships are the coffin. So I wonder if that was.
I feel like that's definitely a thing. And then, I'm going with the flow. Because you mentioned Poseidon, I was thinking about like the trident, which you can probably see. The trident. But the Bayesian flag is the broken trident in the middle. And what that represents is the colonial Bayesian flag has Britannia ruling the waves. And she's kind of on this ship. It's like a circle. And there she is on the ship, and she's holding the full like trident. And then there was a competition of Bayesian open call, and I've forgotten the guy's name because I'm still decolonizing up here as to what I can remember and what I can't. But someone on the island, the guy designed a flag, the broken trident. So this thing that's been broken off, and it's kind of like a really interesting symbol because it's still of that. It's still from that. Image that you can't ever disconnect it from Poseidon or like that idea, but symbolically broken off. So that's part of the new narrative, like.
Powerful.
One thing I wanted to mention.
Oh no! I'm so sorry, but we have to wrap up now because we've got that performance. I
Quick,
would love to, but I'm getting proper evil eye. I've got to cut this out. But Emmanuel, have you got Instagram people can follow you on? Okay, so you got to come back next year, guys. If you want to meet Emmanuel, come back next year. But I just want to say, or in the break that's coming up in 2 minutes, I promise, guys. But I just want to say, Dr.Hannah, Catherine Jones, Esi Eshun, Richard Mensah, Emmanuel, of course. Thank you so much for being part of this panel, for sharing your work, your reflections, and I'm sure people are going to go back and think about it. And you better search them, guys, because they're out here on social media, or you can go to thecollectivemakers.co.uk to find out more information about them as well. Thank you for your time, thank you for your work, and just looking forward to seeing what else you guys produce, which will be amazing.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. We know timing and us haven't always been in unison, but we promise we're going to be more stricter. Just to let you know, we have a live performance starting at 4:15. So if you guys want to use the toilet, get some water, I promise you, we will be starting at 4:15. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Of course, guys, I know everyone is very sociable, or not today, so can you just reach back one and say hi to someone behind you? And ask them, how did they get here today? And how or if no one behind you, to the side of you. How about that? Some of you have been here since like 12, man, ratings. There is no special cookie, but there is free drinks after. Don't worry. All good. Okay, guys, the trauma's over. You can now sit down. So, guys, Chisara, you see it. Like, people see these beautiful sounds, pieces, art, and they just think, wow, that person must be super talented, and it just must be so natural. Yes, it's natural, but also it takes a lot of effort, a lot of discipline, and a lot of technical knowledge, as we can see. So we have Chisara Gore out here, who is a multidisciplinary artist, music, film, literally any time. She's literally a visual, look at her, visual feast. A snack, for those translating to, she's just a snack. And don't worry, I'll slide into DMs later, don't worry. But more importantly, she's going to just perform this emotive piece for us, and just take it away, Chisara. Thank you.
The dust doesn't settle here. It's in constant flux, ascending from the cracked ground. Terra firma that is hot, with air that trembles under the weight of our civilizations. The stratosphere is on fire and our lungs bear the burden of its truth. This chaos, this estrangement. Time should not be violent, yet violence follows in the shadows of malintent. Shadows that span centuries. A ravaged in mind, heavenly body. Our organ-stained faces become the legacy of our dislocation. We tried to rule the world. Now there are no flags, no dominions. Gypsy again, last ones. We are lost and hungry with no home, wandering, wanderless, right?
Wanted to bounce. She didn't want to come and do talk, but I'm just going to take her for a second whilst we also move the space for our final panel. But Chazara, thank you so much for that. I think sometimes people's music speaks for themselves anyway, or their sounds and expressions. But did you just want to give us like a few words on how you were inspired? I know you get a bit nervous. Is it about your equipment? Is it about your equipment? No, cool. Come this way just for a second. Shine us, guys, another round of applause for her. Come on. I promise they will not damage your stuff. I promise they will not. Just about, if you could give some sort of like some sort of like reflections about what made you sort of produce some of this work.
So it's a project. Sorry, I can't. Really important stuff. No, I'm holding. It's okay. It's cool. What were you asking? Sorry.
Just about some of your inspiration behind some of the work you've shown today.
It was inspired by an idea I had to try and combine the kind of surrealist thoughts I had and philosophical thoughts I had with research on Igbo cosmology and pre-colonial mythology, and trying to create my own myths in works. And so that's kind of a result of that is this film. But there's also like an hour-long project that I'm working on that will be like liver than this performance that will hopefully be next year sometime, that hopefully everyone can come and see and experience.
We will be there, won't we, guys? Yeah, don't worry about that. I just think sometimes with black artists, we don't, can I swear, it's almost 5 o'clock. Sometimes we don't talk our shit, man. Like, you know, with a high chest. And honestly, you've done so much. But if people wanted to find you, where is the best place to find you? And I know you've got something coming up next year, and you talk about it like it's far away. Next year's in 2 months. So just like your website, and also as well,
my website is myname.com. And it's, I think, best way to keep up to date with all the things is the mailing list on the website. If you just sign up to the mailing list, I don't email very often, so don't worry. And it will just let you know what bits of my practice are happening when. And social media is the same, but I think the mailing list is really a concise kind of presentation of what's going on. So yeah, catch you there maybe on the list.
And my triple final question, do you think as a black artist, do you think things have improved? Do you think you're getting larger platforms, or do you still think there's much of a way to go from your experience?
Oh, that's a big question.
So I like these big sneak attack questions, apologies.
I can't speak for everyone, so I'm going to speak just for myself. I think every artist has their own personal journey, especially about what they're trying to do and the practice, what they're trying to make. I found it difficult being multidisciplinary and finding places to show my work. And I think that's a problem for most artists who don't do one thing or do the kind of obvious thing per se, or like the thing that's trending or whatever that is. I think it's always difficult, but I guess that added layer of societal, like, black people don't do this stuff or don't do that, and kind of then trying to find yourself and find spaces for yourself. But a lot of time we're trying to make spaces for ourselves, and that can be very draining. And I think it's better. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the more we look into the future, the more we find artists in our past who've just been overlooked. And so it's been there. And hopefully we'll continue that legacy and be able to give flowers and bring those people into the conversation, because I think that's really important moving forward too.
Absolutely. I think we need to give you your flowers one more time. And thank you so much to Cesara. And all your stuff isn't broken, yeah? 'Cause I'm not sure what the insurance situation is out here. So just as Cesara is just making sure her baby, her stuff, we've got like 2 minutes and we're not going to have a break, guys, because obviously whenever I say that to you guys, it takes like an hour to come back and that's not what's going to happen today. So we got our final panel, who will be coming up shortly. But again, just to remind you, when you guys had your little drinks and your snacks, you noticed there was QR codes all over. Go for it. And within those QR codes, it's about giving feedback. So we'd really appreciate that. You can also go on the website, which is thecollectivemakers.co.uk, to be part of our membership, which is free, but you get a monthly newsletter. And it also aids you and connects you to a massive array of artists and, promoting those creative and diverse voices. So we're just doing a final interchange, and it'll be the final panel for the evening. So if you want a quick toilet break, this may be your moment. Testing. Guys, you've made it. The vortex of art conversation. You've made it to the end, day 2. Again, the collectivemakers.co.uk to be part of the membership, which is free. And guys, this talk will probably be around 45 minutes to an hour, give or take. But there is going to be free drinks, guys, and a space for you guys just to network and chat after. So don't think you have to rush off after. We really want to just hear your thoughts in person. So please stay on after to talk to all of us and to these, more importantly, these amazing artists that are going to come on. So first, of course, women come first, of course. We've got Marissa Hilton, who's coming on to our panel. She spent 13 years in the architectural world, and then she realised, you know what? I'm bigger than this. I've got more talent. And she went on to create her own art movement. She's also an educator as well, and she looks at our ancestors and uses different mediums, specifically painting and sculpture, to really express her work. So, Marissa Hilton, come to the stage. A quick outfit check. More blacks, more dogs, more
Do you know what I'm saying?
Irish.
Don't do that to me, man.
Yes. Next on our panel.
God.
You look scared, Marissa. Marissa, man. You're scared for your boyish, yeah? Is that what it is? Next on this, we have
What do I say?
the man who's... Is Richard still here? Essie's not still here, both Ghanaians, no? Oh, Essie, I'm sorry. No, not to offend you. One of the greatest exports from Ghana is coming next on the stage. His work was inspired by his time, his heritage, his culture in Ghana, and was slightly polished in the UK. A lot of his work is mainly autobiographical. It looks at mental health, about pain, about loss, and also empowerment. And Kobe Martin, please come to the stage. Finest export from Ghana. Looking very chic. Thank you so much. And last but not least, the guy who does not like to be seen. Our co-founder, the reason why we are here today. Afro-Swedish. What's wrong with being Afro-Swedish? Okay, that's cool. Or maybe you can tell me after, but it just shows you about your heritage. Someone, again, who looks at social issues, and he uses so many different mediums, and he's the reason why we're here. Joseph, come through. So we have a really diverse panel today, and this is our final one, and a lot of what we've been looking at for the last 2 days has been about our history. We've touched briefly yesterday about artificial intelligence and our future, but what I really want to do is just have a conversation about our present, where we're at, and where you think we're going to go. And also some exploitation and capitalism and how that's impacted particular artists who have been screened in places maybe other people should be screened. But first of all, Marissa, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I'm really well. Just thank you for being here. And obviously, as you know, one of our biggest things we talk about is our cultural connection to the water. Mm-hmm. And I know you love to use a lot of symbolism in your work. Yeah. And I just wondered what your reflections were.
I sat through that talk, and I would say, I'm not going to say it hit a nerve, but there was a lot of things that that resonated with me with that talk, especially the whole thing about our relationship with water. For me, my name, Marissa, means of the sea, and I've always had a very close connection with water, although my first experience with water was actually almost drowning. But for some reason, I feel very at home with water. I live near water, my studio is on the river, and that's where I feel that I get my creative source from. And I think the connection with, especially ancestral connections that we have with water, I think that does inspire some of my work as well, because I work a lot with deities and ancestry and symbology and cosmology as well.
Shout out one deity people don't know about. My favourite's Ogun. Mine's Ogun. I don't know if it's a god more than a deity.
I think the one that I know the most about, simply because there's a lot of connections in Jamaica to her, is we call her, it's either Mami Water or River Mama or Yemoja, Yemanja, Yemaya. So there's a lot of the Yoruba Orishas were taken over to the Caribbean and the Americas, you know, during
and Brazil, yeah,
definitely, yeah. So we have a lot of the similar things going on over there as well.
Brilliant. And just connecting this back to water, obviously we are at the National Maritime Museum in 2022, just in case people weren't sure which year it is, it feels like it all rolls into one. And what do you think is the significance of black art in this, what was previously a white institution? How do you think your art is now being seen in these platforms? Do you think it's going somewhere? Or do you think there's still so much to do? What are your thoughts, Kobe?
It's been a long time coming for black artists to be in, you know, white spaces, and we've been banging on the door for a very, very long time. So I think we haven't even scratched the surface yet. We're still fighting, you know what I mean? More time when we're in the spaces, we're allowed in the spaces, but then again, if you think deeper into it, we're often used as props as well, in the sense that, oh, look, we've got black artists in here now. We've opened the gates wide open, but, you know, in another conversation, it could be that we're just using this to our advantage. You know, there's a gallery that I've been looking at for a very long time, and
are you ready to name drop that gallery?
I don't want Aoife in it, but I mean, shit. Exactly.
Hey, she need Aoife.
But
whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, for a very long time, they never ever had any black artists in it until the George Floyd march and the protests, and then our voices was being heard, and then I went to that gallery again, and I don't know where they were having a group show for black artists from different continents in Africa. And it's very questionable, but that was 2 years ago. But now when you go there, it's not happening anymore, So like I said, we haven't even still scratched the surface yet. There's still a lot more of work to do. That's why, being in spaces like this and having these conversations are important. So, I'm very honored to be here on the panel, to be able to be a voice for that, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like what you're describing is what they call optical allyship, but it's like, oh, this has happened.
Exactly.
Oh, who do we know that's black hat here that can just do a 1, 2, 1, 2, and then it's like, take care in there, all the best. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, basically smoke and mirrors, literally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're in there, but you're not in there.
And just like bringing in Joe as well, it's hard because, cost of living is high.
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying? And obviously, all of your art has integrity, and you want it to be seen and felt by others. But knowing there are these institutions that aren't really allies, they're just using it for their own benefit. How do you guys negotiate that? Joe, would you like to start?
Before you even start with negotiation, I think for me as an artist and me as being part of the collective, there was Alberta Whittle, some of you guys, if you watched her video, and she mentioned about, how, I think during Black Lives Matter a few years ago, where a crowd, the movement was chanting, saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And for me, you can't go to a space and think you can change by yourself as an artist. You have to come as a unit. And I think that's very, very important, first of all. When we started the Collective Makers about 2 years ago, it wasn't just myself, it wasn't just Sabrina. We had to come as a collective. We had to speak with other artists and say, look, we're going to do this together. This is what we're going to do. And in that way, our voices get heard more. And it's only then, unfortunately, institutions would then start hearing you. Do you get what I'm saying? One thing I would also like to mention is Patrick Hutchison, if you guys know who he is. during the Black Lives Matter when a lot of things was going on. And it took one guy to save another white man through the riots, that people start opening their eyes and realize, oh, there's a big issue. And it was just 2 years ago, but this has been going on for years. It's been going on for years. I mean, I'm sure guys here at the panel have gone through the racial abuse from young age. The conversation that was said yesterday, for instance, that was like, that kind of resonated with me was that, you know, when I was young, I never saw black artists through my education. I mean, it's only now that I'm kind of like seeing everyone coming out and being an artist, and there are artists that's been there for years that have not been recognized, that are now getting recognized now. Like, for instance, like Sonia Boyce, for instance, only being recognized now, but she's been there for years. Why was that not being put in our educational system, and why haven't we seen that at that time, and why is it now? So there's a lot of issues, and in order for us to get into these spaces, you have to come together first. We have to have that kind of conversations that we're having now. We're going to have different workshops, different activities in order for our voices to be heard. And each artist has a power, but when you come together, it becomes greater. And I think that's how you kind of channel into institutions.
Absolutely. I concur. Marissa?
No, I was going to say, I agree with you about I didn't know the majority of the black artists that I know about now when I was actually studying art. And I've had a formal art education, as in like been to art school, and didn't know about any of them until I finished. And now that I actually teach art, I use...
Shout out your institution.
Oh, it's a private college.
Okay, come on.
Yeah,
promote.
It's a private, it's a Kaplan International College.
Fantastic.
And so I teach art to international students, but I teach visual research and analysis of fine art. And I use work by black artists to get my students to do their research and analysis, because the curriculum as it stands has the regular standard artists that they would want you to look at, like Lucian Freud and the other like Renaissance artists and things like that. But I'm now in a position where I can change that from the inside. And the fact that I can use artists that I've had to learn about myself and use artists that I know personally as well, I think that is, when we were talking, especially when we were talking about yesterday, about how are we going to kind of like take this narrative into the future. And I think if you're on the inside, do it from the inside. Because sometimes, like you were saying, you're knocking on doors trying to get in. If you are on the inside, use that to your advantage. Because it's not always going to be the case of people allowing you that space. Sometimes you've just got to take advantage of whatever position that you're in.
It's so interesting speaking about you learning about new artists. You have to go out and seek that information. So was it this week you were at the Black Cultural Archives? There was about 60 black artists who gathered. It's on The Guardian, it's in the news. How was that for you to be like, you're part of these new artists that young girls, boys are going to see and be inspired?
It was really, really good. There was such a mix of generations there, and some of the older artists I know personally, but it was always a dream of mine when I was, because I used to run Black British Visual Artists, and my friend Lisa used to run Black British Artists, and between the two of us, the vision was to connect generations of artists. And it was something that on that day, on Wednesday, Lisa actually made it happen. And I think, again, what with her being in an institutional place helped to actually make that happen as well. And just seeing artists who are in their like 70s and 80s and artists who are in their, their 20s all together in the same place was just amazing.
So you have these established artists connecting with these new emerging black artists. And that must have been such an amazing space. And as much as we're not getting into the doors, I'm saying we like I'm an artist, you know. Sorry, this is the talent over here. I'm not getting into the doors. There is a hunger for black art.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this tiny little weird space where people who aren't established artists, they're not emerging artists, but now they're in the Saatchi Gallery. Skepta, for instance.
Nothing, I don't say anything.
Do people know about Skepta? He recently, was it about a couple of months ago, he exhibited in Saatchi, which is like one of the biggest places to try and even get your work into as a black artist. And I think his work went for what, 80, 90 grand?
Yeah.
And to be real, it was like kind of local work, man. Like we've seen like, sorry, like I can say it because I'm not in the arts, no one's gonna give me a job anyway, so it's fine for me. But I just wonder how frustrating is that, like for those, you know, established artists, an emerging one, and we've got someone out here who can spit a tune and he's dating a girl or he used to whatever, and now he's been treated like he's as serious as you guys.
Do you know what? The art world is all about nepotism.
Yeah, but he's a Niger boy, isn't it?
But it's basically about, so.
I mean, I'm Nigerian, by the way, representing my end. But yeah, I'm Nigerian, but I mean, when I think of nepotism, I think of like all these families who have, you know, generations already have that power and they're just giving it to their own youth. But I can see Kobe is itching in his own way. You've got something to say, please say it. How does that make you feel, the Skepta situation?
I think, what was the name of the auction house? It's Born, isn't it? Sotheby's, yeah. I think every year Sotheby's has a category where they get like a prominent person in music, in film, to curate a show. And I think for this year, it was Skepta, and there's another famous artist. He done the vampire movie with the girls on the walls.
What, Twilight?
Yeah, I think it's Twilight. Yeah. So it's Skepta and the actor. So they it's something that happens every year. You know, that's what I found. So for Skepta to be in that space as you know, as a person of color, I think for me personally, I think it was to penetrate that space. Obviously, he's done a lot in music, but for him to get into that space as a musician, creating art, it's a good look to some extent. But if I was Skepta's advisor, what I would have said to him in that sense, because he only created one body of work and he curated the entire show. So which means that it was Sotheby's made it up to him to select the other artists that will fill up the space. So then again, it comes down to his network and the friends and the people he knows. So he's going to go for that. You know.